welcome tonight. As you know, October is Physical Therapy Month, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate it than have these two gentlemen who will remind us of why we became physical therapists. They have quite a story. Both of them were ventilated for over a month, not by design or by their wishes. They've become super users of physical therapy, and they've made remarkable recoveries. There will be ample time for questions. We are always on the vertical. When you are horizontal for a while, your world changes drastically and very, very quickly. This is very much a patient's perspective. And so I'm going to hand this off to Dan. We're going to go through some ground rules, and we're going to hear about this journey these gentlemen took. Dan?
Well, thanks, Brian, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know we have physical therapists, but we also have patients. We have other rehab professionals, other healthcare professionals, other first-line responders as well, or frontline workers as well. So I want to thank all of you guys for joining us, and wish you all a happy PT month as well. New Jersey, I'm the executive director of the Physical Therapy Association. I've been here for 7 years now. I consider myself a Jersey guy, born and bred, moved all around the state, live in Mercer County. But the one thing that I think about when we're doing this is, if you think about New Jersey and everybody who's here, you think about that toughness, the toughness and the resilience of the people. There's a dogged determination of New Jerseyans that we've seen on display from those frontline workers, from first responders, and from patients, two of which we're going to hear about. That to me is true New Jersey, and I truly believe there is no better state in the union than this one that we're in. There's no better people. There's no tougher people. And, that brought us to speaking to these two gentlemen who you're going to hear from, and to tell their story of toughness, of resilience, and it happening right here in the state of New Jersey. So with that, I want to introduce you. I'm going to give a little bit of background on Bill Squires. I've gotten to know Bill. I've known him for over 20 years. Bill was way at the top, nationally renowned sports executive when I just got to Giant Stadium as a lowly intern and working there on an event basis with the Stadium Suites crew, who really became like family to me. Even though I was very, very low, I don't think I even got to the totem pole yet. Bill was always just tremendously kind to me, and I've never forgotten that. And I've always greatly appreciated that. If you haven't seen Bill's bio, he is a former commander in the United States Navy, Naval Reserves, United States Naval Academy graduate. As I mentioned, he ran Giant Stadium. He is a past president of the Stadium Managers Association. He opened up Cleveland Browns Stadium, Disney's Wide World of Sports. The list goes on. I've always had a great admiration for him. And, this what he's gone through and his willingness to tell his story has been, even a better gift that he's given us. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bill Squires.
All right. So I'm happy to be here. Certainly happy to be alive. But the quick background is on March 15th. Had dinner with family that night. I started coughing. Next day, I continued coughing. My wife said, you go upstairs, isolate yourself in your office, which I did. I have a bed up here, so I worked and slept. She made meals for me, put them on the steps. I almost felt like I was in jail. I would get my food, put it back on the steps. She'd pick it up. But not soon thereafter, I lost my appetite. Started taking naps in the afternoon, which I never did. And then I started getting a fever. And that was, I guess, the telltale sign. And it was Thursday, March 26th. My wife said, you need to go to the hospital. I said, nah, just give me one more day. She said, no, you're going in. So she called the ambulance. Ambulance came, picked me up, went to St. Barnabas on the 26th, which is a Thursday. I remember checking in. I remember getting examined and having the test done. And then I don't remember anything from that point on. But from what I've been told by my wife, I was still communicating. March 29th, which was a Sunday, she receives a call on my phone thinking it's me, but it's a nurse saying, his oxygen levels are dropping pretty rapidly. We need to put him on a ventilator. And that was it. Like I said, the last day I remember was March 26th. The next day I remember was May 8th. I had no idea where I was, what was going on. But as I came out of sedation, I started realizing that I had the virus and it was pretty serious. And the people at St. Barnabas saved my life. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I give shout outs to them. They did such a wonderful job in taking care of me. On May 12th, new experience. I go to Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation. I live in West Orange. Kessler's in West Orange. I drive by it all the time. Never thought I'd find myself there. But on May 12th, I showed up, and on May 13th, no vacation time at all. I have to start rehabbing. And I remember the first thing my therapist asked me to do was to get out of bed and stand up and see how long I can stand up for. And I said, well, I'm going to need some help getting out of bed because I couldn't move. It took two people to get me out of bed, 75% effort on their part, 25% effort on mine. I stood up for 19 seconds. I collapsed in my wheelchair. I didn't really show any emotion, but I thought inside of me, I'll never be able to walk again. Well, the therapist there at Kessler wouldn't even hear of that. And I have to give a shout out to those therapists, if you don't mind. Natalie Maggio, who's my occupational therapist, Samantha Golden, my speech therapist, Michelle Zelani, my physical therapist. Those were inpatient, and then I went outpatient for a while. Amanda Sylvester, physical therapist, and Brittany Boynton, speech therapist. I don't know where I'd be today without them. What I did learn quickly, and I think Michelle was the first one to make me understand that physical or therapists are not just therapists. They're also psychologists. I remember the first time she took me for a walk, she said, let's take a one lap around this room. And I proceeded to walk around the room, and I'm halfway done, and I can't wait to sit down. And she says, I think you could probably do a second lap. And I looked at her, I said, okay, now I know what you're all about. You're going to push me, you're going to push me hard, and I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. And the only thing I told my therapist, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, but I may sometimes ask you why you want me to do it. So if there's any advice I can give you, therapist out there, is if you're going to have a patient do something, maybe explain to them why you want them to do it, because there's some things I didn't understand, but I did them willingly. I do remember the last day I was there, or prior to the last day I was there. I remember the first time I had to walk stairs. I had, Michelle says, today's the day you're going to walk up four steps. I looked at those steps like they were Mount Everest. I said, I just don't know if I can do that. But I was able to do it. And the amazing thing was, the day before I checked out of there, I did those steps 6 times. So I went from 4 to 24. And it was incredible how much I improved. And it was from the encouragement, the motivation they gave me to get better and get better quick. So I checked out of there on June 5th. I had a feeding tube in me. I was on a walker. I did have a wheelchair, which I really never used. I may have used a walker for maybe 7 to 10 days. And I just started exercising. I started walking. I started doing everything that my therapist said I should do. I remember the first time I took a walk with my wife and daughter up at the reservoir here, up at the zoo. I could only go about half a mile with my walker, and I'd take 4 or 5 breaks. And when I got done, I told my wife and my daughter, by the end of that month, I'm going to be able to walk this whole thing, 1.8 miles, with no walker, no stops. And that's what I did. I started walking in front of my house. I live on a cul-de-sac, and I just walked and walked and walked. Not too long ago, I did 8.5 miles. This past a couple days ago, I did 7 miles. The only reason I stopped walking is I get bored. It's not because I can't do it. I know I can do it, and I know I can do it because of the support, the motivation, and I'll say the love that these young ladies gave me. I told them early on that it was about a week into it. I told each one of them, I said, you know what? I'm going to say 3 words to you that mean the world to me. I'm sorry, I get a little emotional. 3 words were, I trust you. And I'm glad I did, because they got me to where I am today. I no longer have a feeding tube. I'm not on any medications, no more outpatient therapy, no more doctor's appointments. I can drive. I can do everything. I've got some, I just can't do everything as fast as I used to do it, but I'm well on my way to achieving those goals. I think by the end of this year, I'll be in better shape than I've been in the last 20 years. I did lose 35 pounds. I put about 18 back on. I'm probably at my ideal weight, not the way I wanted to lose it, but it has been fun to put it back on. I will tell you that. Um, and I have to give a shout out to not only the therapists, but those other people, the people that I think the normal population doesn't really recognize. And it's like a gentleman by the name of Phil who cleaned my room every day. It's it's the aides that I had to page at 2:00 in the morning to come and change my diaper. They need to be recognized. It's all the healthcare professionals out there. I don't care who you are, first responders, ambulance drivers, firemen, police officers, the people who park your car, valet park at the hospital, the security staff, HVAC, anybody who works in a hospital or a rehab center that contributes to the health and welfare of the patients. It just absolutely means the world to me. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can see this, but I have to wear my T-shirt. I gotta promote, man. I have a lot of friends up there. I look forward to seeing them again, not in the environment that I was in, but for dinner and to talk and to thank them. And I guess I can say this, and I know it's true. It's great to have a second life. And I know one day I'm gonna depart this earth, but I will never forget my experience with my therapist and Kessler Institute, and for those young ladies and all the people there that helped me get back my life. So I applaud you. I thank you for what you do. Believe me, you make a difference. And I mean, I could go on, but my friend Steve is ready to talk, and he's got a great story as well. Dan?
Bill, thanks so much. That was great. And, it obviously, what you went through not only affected you, but the people and the new friends that you probably would have never met along the way. Now you've made new friends and expanded your family circle. So really appreciate you sharing your story and it's okay to cry. I mean, I'm sitting here getting, teary just listening to you and being able to see you after I hadn't seen you in so long, and look forward to when we can get together up at the stadium or some other time. But thank you very much. Screamin' Steve Barlotta is going to share his story, and he is the resident saxophone player and the captain of the legendary Jersey Shore band, the Sensational Soul Cruisers. Now, I had actually seen them not down the Jersey Shore the first time, but in Trenton when they used to play right outside of Waterfront Park. So if you guys haven't seen them play, when they do get back around, I thoroughly encourage you to do so. I mean, Motown, R&B, 80s, you name it, they play it, and they're absolutely phenomenal. Steve's a Jersey guy, too. He's played with the likes of Eddie and the Cruisers, Gary U.S. Bonds, and just a couple of days ago, I was flipping through YouTube watching the Sensational Soul Cruisers, and obviously the boss Bruce Springsteen playing together. I believe it was at the Wonder Bar where some of those videos were shot. So Steve's got a great story, and it's my pleasure to introduce Screamin' Steve Barlotta. So Steve, the floor is yours.
Cool, thanks, Dan. Hey, Brian. Hey, Bill. What a story. We're survivors of this, dreadful disease that, you can't be cavalier about. Basically, I play the saxophone for a living, so my lungs have to be good, to survive and play. The problem with me was, to start the story off, was the day the quarantine started on March 16th. That night, 8 o'clock, the governor said, we're having a quarantine. Everybody's got to be home. So we decided to go to our friend Sal Kim's house to, see our friends and, have coffee and cake, and then go home, and we'll see you in a few months after this is over. Well, what happened was our friend Sal wound up coming down with COVID, and called me 2 days later after seeing him, telling me he was running a fever. 5 days later, I started running a fever. March 25th, I went to Central State, And we had a busy schedule in January, February, so I was suffering from strep throat. And they took the COVID. It took about a week to get back, so I was pretty sick. They said, "Oh, you have strep." So I said, "All right, I have strep." I said, "All right, I beat COVID." Well, I didn't. What happened was March 25th, I got sick. March 24th, just to give you guys an understanding, I walked on a treadmill for about 90 minutes. I watched my show Ozark, and I played saxophone for 2.5 hours. Normal day in paradise. March 25th, I woke up with a cough, with 102 fever. I started running a fever up until all the time I was home. March 31st, I wound up going into the hospital. As soon as I was in there, my oxygen levels were low. They said you have full-blown pneumonia in both your lungs. I was already in a cytokine storm, which is the worst thing you can be in when your immune system is going haywire. And doctors came in. They said they started prepping me to be intubated. April 1st, my oxygen levels went down really bad, even more. April 2nd, they wound up intubating me. Right before they intubated me, I remember one of the last things I remember was Nurse Kim grabbing my phone. I couldn't speak. I was blacking out just from not being able to breathe. And Nurse Kim said to me, you have to call your family, Steve, because we don't know if we're going to get you off the vent. You're going to come back from this. So I understood that they were really honest. I was asking them this, they gave me the whole rundown on being on a vent. Wound up being on a vent. I was on a vent. I was in ICU for 37 days. I wound up getting the plasma the end of April. My wife was an advocate to get it. I was probably one of the first or second people at Central State to get it. I wound up getting the plasma. I wound up making a turnaround during that time, and then eventually being taken off the vent. I remember they were weaning me off out of the coma, and I was awake, and I remember biting on the vent. And, I wanted it out. It's such an annoying feeling, and you want it out. And basically, I wound up turning it around. I'll never forget when Bryant, the nurse, came in with respiratory therapists and a team. They said, "Steve, your numbers look good. We're going to take the vent out." 11 o'clock, they wound up taking the vent out. They said on the count of 3. So on the count of 3, they pulled the vent out. And I can tell you that the feeling of oxygen, fresh air coming into your lungs from canned air, has that metallic kind of smell. So I wound up breathing in air, and I remember Melissa, the nurse, they were screaming in my ear. They were saying, "Steve, smell the flowers, blow out the candles, smell the flowers, blow out the candles, stay awake." Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. During the time when I was on the vent, I remember, we recall it now, like when I talked to Shannon and Rebecca, and it was, they would talk to me while I was on the vent. And it's the craziest thing. When I came out and I went into the step down, everybody came to visit me. And the nurses would come in, and I remember Everett coming in, and I said, "Everett," I said, "you were my nurse." He says, "Yes." I said, "You told me that you were a sergeant in the Army in Afghanistan, and you were a medic." And he says, "I told you that when you were like your 3rd or 4th day on the vent." I said, "And you were from Alabama." He was shocked. I can tell you now, I can recall the conversations when I was awake, when my health care providers were in the room. So one of the most important things I can tell you is that when you're dealing with people that are in a comatose state or sedated, please talk to them, because we do hear everything that's going on. And it's really important. I remember when, Rebecca or, Stephanie and Shannon would come in, people would come in and prone me, they would tell me, they would basically talk to me and tell me what they were going to do. Like one thing was, it spooked them out. They told me that, "Oh, Steve, we're going to have to close your eyes," because I'd be looking at them, following them in the room. And they didn't know if I was awake or not, and they would have to put tape over your eyes. So I closed my eyes. So it freaked them out that I was listening to their verbal commands. I wound up leaving Central State on May 7th. When I was in the step down, they started giving me therapy, which was really important, which gave me the hope. The thing is, you got to realize you're isolated I spent 103 days total in hospital and rehab at Encompass, and basically isolated from the outside world. And you don't realize that these people, the connection that you make with all of them, and they become a guiding force in your life to give you hope to make it through this. Because when I left, I was only able to wiggle my toes and move my thumb. When I got there, to Encompass, and I saw Dr. Cooperman, or, he gave me a great regimen of what I would need to get back, and they gave me the confidence to do it, like with people like David and Michelle and Frank. I got to mention them because they're all probably listening, so, they wound up with speech therapy. Kensley, I couldn't swallow. I had an NG tube. They wound up eventually taking it out, and I was able to learn how to swallow again because I had no voice. I still had barely a voice. So it was tough going. The thing is with therapists, and I do believe that probably what I wished that while I was on the vent, that it was a way of manipulating me even while I was under. Might have helped me with my muscles and getting things going, because I was basically prone for 16 hours a day, for a month, and it's not moving. And we talk about it now. I said, I think, it would be helpful, for patients to be able, for people to do that. I wound up spending 2 months at Encompass, and they kicked my butt. They really gave me the drive. They said, Steve, you're going to get home, you're going to be better. And I went from moving my thumb to moving one finger at a time. Michelle would be there and they would work with me, Kayla, and they would be like, hey, Steve, stay with it. You're going to get there. One hand, I was able to move my left hand. Then eventually I was able to move my right hand, and then my toes. And it wasn't until I got to Encompass on May 7th, it wasn't until June 24th that I took my first steps. I took 15 steps with David, and it was unbelievable feeling to be actually standing upright for the first time, and being able to do that. And I wound up leaving on July 6th, and then I went into Central State for rehab outpatient, and I've been there ever since. Just on the side note, my son's a doctor, and and they advocated for the plasma. I was fortunate enough that I was 1 day away from being trached when I finally got the plasma. So that was, thank God, because my son told them, they said, if you trach him, it'll end his career as a saxophone player. And they encouraged me at Encompass to bring my horn in. My wife brought my saxophone in. I was able to play a few notes, which was a relief, because I'm building my lungs up. My lung capacity is at about 52%. They said it's going to take some time for it to build back up. Voila.
Steve, thank you very much for sharing your story too. And it's funny, as I'm listening to you and I'm listening to Bill, it's amazing how important specific dates become. You mentioned, your milestones, and then, when you went in, or when you came off the vent, or when you went into rehab. It's interesting to hear that, because I guess, I didn't think about things like how important specific dates would become. So that's very interesting. Before we get to question and answer, and again, if anybody has questions, please just type them into the chat. We'll make sure that we read them, and we'll get answers for you. I want to turn it back over to Brian right now. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our colleagues in occupational therapy, speech therapy, respiratory therapy. Very, very much a team effort. I will give a shout out to my colleagues. I had therapists who had not worked inpatient in 20 years. We had millennials who just started the job. Not one of them ever hesitated. They said, show me how to put the PPEs on and I'll go in there. So it really speaks highly of our profession that these people stood up when we really needed them. We didn't know how contagious it was. On some facilities, the PPEs were not as well supplied as you would hope. We were using them, they were scarce. Not once did anyone say, no, I don't want to do this. So when people bash millennials, I have to remember that they were the ones running in the room. So for the most part, So that's what I wanted to make sure that everyone understood what a great effort it was from our end. And Bill, you made a good comment there. The first healthcare worker, hospital employee to die of COVID was a housekeeper
Wow.
in New Jersey. Yeah. Question time, Dan?
So it's question time. So again, if anybody has any questions, please let us know. We've got some questions that were sent to us early on, but Cindy Moore, who's on the line, she just wanted to thank you guys for sharing your powerful story and for recognizing those who helped you. So a little bit less of a question, but more of a comment. So Steve, did you put your hand up?
No. I'm just.
Oh, okay. And then, Steve and said usually Arthur and Kitty. So, I think you guys got your fan clubs on tonight's call. I know that, I know Kessler's on, and I know your rehab people are on, not just from Central State, but also Encompass, Steve. So, I want to get into questions, and you guys both mentioned, we talked about dates, but you mentioned the little things. What little things do you think you took from this that stand out for you more than you would have thought? So, Bill, what are the little things?
I'm not sure if they're so little. I mean, they're big in everything's big in my mind right now. It's like I tell all my friends right now, I don't have a bad day. Yeah, it's like to wake up and know you're not going to have a bad day, but every day's a good day. Some are great, but most of them are good. Little things. I guess it's not a little thing for me, but I remember, I'm sorry, ladies, I can't remember which one of you took me out to the courtyard for the first time being outside, and in 60 days, I was actually in the hospital for 48, and I was at Kessler for 22. But I was at Kessler, and they said, hey, would you like to go out in the courtyard? I said, oh, can I do that? And they took me out in my wheelchair. It was a really hot day, and the therapist said, it's probably too hot for you to do this. I said, you just put me in the sun and don't talk to me for 10 minutes. Just let me sit there and just enjoy the sun. I don't care if I'm sweating. I don't care. Hell, I hadn't taken a shower. I only took 2 showers in 2 months. So, a little bit of sweat wasn't going to bother me, may bother them. But that was a little thing to maybe some people, but it was huge, absolutely huge to me. And I'll tell you what, I really think, and I know this for a fact, that, and I have to give a shout out to Bonnie Evans, who's the president CEO of Kessler, and Dr. Lamb, who was my physiatrist. They've been great throughout this whole process as well. But my therapist, and I think Steve will say the same thing, I'm probably anybody who's been through, they loved me. They cared about me. And it was so obvious to me that they really cared about me. And I got to tell you, that means an awful lot to somebody who, once again, I was isolated, didn't see my family. Thank God for FaceTime. I didn't watch any TV. I didn't really enjoy, Natalie waking, coming at 9 o'clock in the morning. I would like to slept in a little bit. But once you walk through the door, I felt I was in good hands, and I felt good, and I felt comfortable. And I missed them on the weekends when I had a day off, believe it or not. So, that's not such a little thing. Those may be little things to some people, but to me, it was absolutely huge that they cared about me, and I could feel like that they cared about me.
Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I have to agree with Bill. The empathy that healthcare workers on all levels, from people cleaning the room, they become your extended family. The thing is that, they become your connection to the world, the outside world. Like Bill going outside, I was just thinking of that. It was 90 days since I finally went outside. And I remember Joe wheeling me out there. And, and I just took in the sun, the same thing. The little things, 90 days not seeing the sun. But I think that in a lot of ways, the PTs and OTs, since they spend a lot of time, even at Encompass, in Central State, they would spend 2 to 3 hours a day with you. You got to know them. They got to know you. They became your therapist in a lot of ways. I think, which is that's probably not a job description, they go for. It's all physical and OT and speech and all that. But, they really, gave me they put my head on straight on everything's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. And, I mean, that they gave me the fighting chance. I mean, your family, I didn't want them to see the condition I was in. It really broke my heart a lot of times. They would ask me, oh, you want to call your family? And I'd be like, not really, because I didn't want them to see me that I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything, but they would say, Steve, talk to them. They love you. They understand what you're going through. A lot of people do, and I think it's important to what they conveyed, all my therapists, OTs, speech, was the real love and commitment to making sure that I told Dr. Kuberman, I am walking out of here. And I would tell them all, and they said, Steve, we believe you are. They stayed with me, they stood by my side, and that's what we accomplished. Because I walked out vertically on July 6th with a walker, but I walked out of that place. And I did myself, my family, and everybody else proud, I hope.
I'm sure you made everybody proud. And speaking of that, Steve, we just got a question from Shannon Lenahan. I'm sure you know Shannon. She said, Steve and Bill, thank you so much for your courage to share probably the worst experience of your life with us. It is certainly appreciated. My question is, did you have any experience with PT prior to COVID? And did your perception change? Did your perception of PT change?
Yeah, myself, actually, that's pretty good. In October, crazy experience I had was the end of the summer. I was playing at Valley Forge, and I had a crazy fan come on stage and knock me off the stage, and I wound up grabbing the railing, and I wound up tearing the rotator cuff, and I had physical therapy, and it was like, you go and you do all the little things and stuff, but you don't as far as and it's really, routine of getting better and everything else, and 3 days a week, and that's short-lived. The relationship that was built upon with this kind of rehab, it was like, I would say I had everything going on. I was orthostatic. They would put me in a tilt table, and I remember Michelle and Frank would be there. I would tank out on them, or David. I would tank out at 30 degrees. And they had to slowly build it up. And they had to be patient to work with me and have the foresight to say, it will get better. It's much more of a hands-on personal thing, also on the medical level. When you're dealing with rehab, I think it's, you're repaired and it's just getting you strength. Here, they had to do, blood pressure, pulse ox, because I was still on oxygen for a time. They had to make sure they were monitoring everything. So it was a lot more involved as far as inpatient therapy. And even now at Centra State, they're always monitoring, making sure, blood pressure and everything as well, when they're, doing the workouts. So it is much different than just, regular rehab going to, say, all care or something like that, for, acute rehab.
Bill?
No, this is my first experience with rehab, with PT, and needless to say, I'm a fan. It's what they were able to do with me was just absolutely incredible, and like I said, I'll never forget them, and I'm going to keep working hard. I've got more exercises to do. I mean, if I did everything they wanted me to do, I wouldn't be able to do anything else during the day. So, but they give me everything I need to be successful, and I'm grateful.
Great. So in your opinion, you guys have been through something that truly, a small population. Bill, you and I talked about it Sunday about a small population could ever go through or ever know about. What's the biggest misconception that the public has about being diagnosed with COVID? I'll start with you, Bill.
I think the biggest challenge is some people out there still don't think it's a real big deal. They can walk around without their masks. They can, violate almost all the protocols. Listen, Steve and I are going to tell you this is the real deal. And I think they hear so many stories about, people being asymptomatic, people just hanging at home for a week. They see what the president just went through. 3 days, he's back on the road again. That's not, that's not. It can be the real world for some people, but for others, I mean, I don't need to mention the number of people that have passed from this, or God knows how many people are going to have lifelong disabilities because of their experience with COVID-19. And I just think it's the misbelief or misconception that it's not real, and it really isn't that bad. It's like the flu. It's not like the flu. So I wish people would follow protocols so we can eradicate this, get the vaccine, and get back to normal.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree with Bill. It's we can't have a cavalier attitude towards it. I think it's definitely a serious disease. I think that we're at the point where we know a lot more now than we did in March as far as treating it, and especially now with the rapid tests. Like at the time, when you think about it, when we had it, it took them 7 days to figure out that I had COVID, and those 7 days, that's the crucial time. And I think I think people have to wear masks. Absolutely, get over it. It's a way of life right now. I think things can open up, businesses can, but everyone's got to follow the rules. It's simple. You know what I mean? Wear a mask, wash your hands, socially distance, and I think it can work out. We can all get along in this little bubble called Earth, but I think, we're at the point where it is absolutely a real disease. I mean, I knew it was. When I was sick, I was like, this is really bad, and especially when they prepped me and they told me, we're going to ventilate you. It becomes very real in a lot of ways, but I think, like Bill said, I think it's not a hoax. It's a real, I worry about, like talking with my healthcare providers now, that I know a lot of them they're worried about a spike, coming back and being overwhelmed like they were. And I think a lot of them, like as much as I do, I would talk with Dr. Nancy Johnson. She was a neuropsychologist. I think even healthcare workers suffer PS, post-traumatic stress, from this. And I know a lot of them are worried about it coming back and dealing with it on a lot of different levels, because it was tough. I mean, Bill probably, I remember, when I was hooked up to everything was ran outside the room. And I was like, nobody would come in. They would, had short on PPEs. So they would do all the changing of all the, medicines, everything from all the lines would run outside the room. And it's, it's a tough existence, for them and for myself, but I think that, it's real, they, especially you guys, you saw what we went through, there was people coding left and right, we made it, what a few.
So Steve, you bring up a good point. Brian, I want to go over to your perspective. Steve brings up PTSD, or the stress that frontline workers or healthcare providers went through. Brian, I know you and I talked early on, every day, probably 2 or 3 times a day, trying to figure this out. Can you, and you having you and your staff on the front line, can you give some insight into the PTSD or the stress that came with, treating guys like Bill and Steve?
The therapists do get very invested in their patients, and these were patients who unfortunately could crash and go south very quickly. I know in our unit they had a board where they would put up what the ventilator support was for patients, and when people would walk by, I got a little emotional. You would see some nurses crying because people weren't doing well. So it's hard, for everyone. But they knew they had a mission for the patients. They needed to be there for them. And Steve, you made a good point about the power of human touch, and I think that's was a real helpful for a lot of the patients. But this was unknown territory for everyone. So it is difficult. I think the CCU nurses who were there for 60 hours a week are in a different area than most therapists, and my hearts go out to them. Because they were the ones with the phones.
And Brian, just as you're talking, and we talk about this all the time, as the Physical Therapy Association, as an advocacy organization, you're doing your best to protect and advance the physical therapy profession or the OT profession or where you're at, you wish people, influencers or decision makers or even politicians can hear this, because these are the types of differences that these healthcare providers make. And I say, when I go to the schools, you're not going into this to look to make, millions and millions of dollars. You're looking to help people. And I think that gets lost a lot. So, and the mental health of our healthcare professionals is certainly, another topic that that we need to make sure that we address. Steve, you both mentioned, and we talked about it before we got on the call, you both mentioned your experiences on the ventilators. You were both on for, I think, 35 and 37 days respectively. Bill, what do you remember about that? I know you said you went to sleep and you woke up. You went to sleep in March, woke up in May. But did you remember certain parts of the ventilator experience?
No. And to hear Steve talk about them pulling it out of him, that just, no, I don't remember any of it. I don't remember them. I don't remember even say they were going to do it. I don't remember them pulling it out. I mean, the only thing I know about it, I've seen pictures of me on it. It's kind of funny. I guess it's funny. It is funny. My oldest daughter did a screenshot video of me when I'm first recovered. I can talk and I can understand what's being said. And the first thing I asked them is, "What's the Giants' record?" Because I work with the New York Football Giants. They couldn't understand because I was saying, "Arr." I couldn't say record. And they finally figured it out. And then they all started laughing. And they said, "Hey," they said, "it's good. They haven't lost a game yet." And I went, "Oh, Dad, it's May. They haven't played a game yet." So I didn't have the experience that Steve had. And I got to be honest with you, I'm grateful I did. And I don't know how I would have handled that. But I was intubated twice. They pulled me off it after 25 days. Thought I was doing all right. And 2 days later, they had to put me back on it. I don't remember that. I just know it because my wife's told me that. I was on it for another 7 days, and they were talking about give me a trach the very next day. And I guess God stepped in and said, "Nah, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that." So my oxygen was restored, and so I don't really have the experience that Steve has. And sorry, Steve, I'm glad that I don't.
It's, but yeah, my experience, that was a thing when I was on campus. I would try to talk to some of the patients, like their experiences, what they went through. And a lot of them had nightmares. And I'd be like, "Oh," I was like, well, how was your experience, Steve? And I was like, "Well, I didn't have any nightmares. I had dreams, and I knew they were dreams. I would have dreams that I was on Mayberry, of all places, with Andy Griffin, and I would be like fishing, and I'd be like running around Mayberry, and Aunt B would be feeding me chicken, I'd be going at the dinner table, eating all the time. And and it would be one long continuous dream like this. And it was great. Then I had other dreams that I was in the Bahamas with my family, and I beat COVID. Speaking with, the neuropsychologist, she said, "Well, Steve, that was the way of your body, you mentally saying, you're going to fight this. You want to be in a happy place. You were pushing ahead to try to live." I said, "Probably right." Then I had the one experience I was telling Bill, and I think Brian knows, is that I had an experience that I knew I conveyed after I was able to speak to my wife. And I said, I had an experience that was much different than the dreams. I felt my presence, my body. It was the weirdest thing. My soul, I don't know what you call it. I felt myself lift up out of my body and something holding me. I was so at peace. I'm telling you, Dan, Brian, Bill, I could have stayed there. I didn't have to go. I was so at peace. I knew everything was okay. White light, didn't see anything. And the voice said to me, "Steve," it said, "it's not your time. Go home to your family." And from that moment, and it was split second like that. From that moment on, even mentally, I knew I was going to get better. I was going to walk, and everything was going to be okay. And it was definitely a profound experience, different than my dreams. That's why I always kid around about the dreams, because the dreams were like, I knew there were dreams. We all had great dreams. You want to be like, bottom of the ninth, hitting a home run or something like that, like, fun things. And that experience was definitely, I conveyed it to my wife and my son. They said, well, during Holy Week, you were in, your numbers were really bad because my sister-in-law, who's also a nurse, came to visit my wife on the Saturday, and the family came over. And my wife couldn't figure, why are you guys coming over? They were coming over because they didn't think I was going to make it through the night. And I have to say, it must have been around that time. I can only surmise, from my experience. But they were all at the house, waiting to, think I wasn't going to make it through the night and I was going to pass on. I didn't. I showed them. But thank God. But even for families, like Bill, I imagine my wife went through hell for the month. It was pure hell. Speaking to my son who came in from New Orleans, he's a doctor. He came and came home. He said my wife would be curled up on the couch in a fetal position, just knowing. When you have people that know the numbers, Dan, like they would get the records and they would look at them and it would be like, numbers aren't looking good. The oxygen is PP number, whatever they are, the numbers, were really bad, and they didn't think I was going to make it, going to kidney failure or whatever. But lucky I didn't. I made it through. But what an experience. And I would remember, things. Like I told you early on, people coming into the room, and like Bryant was one of the nurses, and I thought he was my doctor. He was a man. He was from down south too. And I was like, oh, this guy is so tough. He was like, oh, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. And I remember him telling me this, just hearing the voices. And I think being a musician, when I went into the step down and people came to visit me, I was able to recognize them all by their voice, because being a musician, you hear sounds, and I'd be like, oh, you're Melissa? I said, wow, I remember, I knew her name before she started talking. When she started talking, I knew her name. I was like, oh, Melissa. And she said, how do you know my name? I said, you took care of me. And it would, it was the craziest thing. But I remember that. I think that also helped, being on the vent, being in the coma, in the state, sedated, that hearing the voices of encouragement of, your caregivers, gave me the fight. Even when I went to the step down, gave me the fight. I heard it. And the only thing I can stress to them is that if this gets bad again, you're up there proning them, talk to them, because you are the only contact these people are going to have. You got to realize, I had, when you're dying of a stroke, or you're having a heart attack, or, you're gravely ill from cancer, they're all terrible things. I get it. Usually you'll have a family member by your side holding your hand. This disease, you can't have your family there because you don't want to make them contagious. So it's a very isolating experience, and they become your family. They become the ones to give you hope, to fight on. The physical therapists, the doctors, the nurses, they would come in and pro me. Thank God they would talk to me. They gave me the fighting spirit to go on.
So you make a good point, and Bill, Caitlin Denzer-Weiler, who's part of the Kessler team, she writes, "Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring stories. You mentioned a couple things that we could improve upon. Are there any others?" Now, I know Steve just said, talk to the patients because it's a lonely experience. What are your thoughts, or what else do you think that possibly in your state that providers could have helped you with?
Yeah, I tell you what, I have no criticism whatsoever. The only thing, and I did this, I mentioned this in my outgoing survey. The one thing I did not know was, I thought that the only time I can get out of my bed was when I had to use the restroom, or when my therapists were there, or when the aides came in to change my sheets. There was one day on a weekend where I didn't have any therapies whatsoever, so I just laid in bed the entire day. I mean, I really couldn't do much else, but I found out that I could have requested an aide or somebody to get me out of bed and have me get on my walker and just be able to walk around the halls a little bit to get some exercise and just get out of the room. I did not know that was an option. I did put that in my outgoing survey, but other than that, I still have my blue and gold bracelets on, One's a trip hazard. As a matter of fact, blue and gold, go Navy. That's my alma mater. I still have them on, but blue is I think fall hazard, and gold is don't feed me. So at night when the individuals go around or bring the meals throughout the day, they'd make a mistake once in a while, come in my room and said, "Here's your meal," and I said, "I only wish I could eat it." Just make sure they probably don't do that. But no, I really have that. That's the only comment that I have, and they were great. They're absolutely terrific. And I just want to say this before I forget. Now that I have my feeding tube out, I can start donating plasma. So I've got my first appointment on Friday. I'm hoping I got the antibodies, and I hope that stay in me for a long time so I can give my plasma every 28 days. There's 3 things I promised myself when I got out of rehab or while I was in rehab. And I use the acronym ARM, A-R-M. A is awareness of COVID. R is for recognizing healthcare professionals, and M is for making a difference in everything I do. So you healthcare professionals, I'm never going to forget you. I'm out there pounding the pavement for you. I hope I never see you again, but I love you anyhow.
Thanks,
Steve.
Bill. Steve, how about you? Anything they can, any improvements that our healthcare providers should be aware of?
Nah, these kids know what they're doing. They really, the one thing I would say that maybe, I'm not even sure if it would help, is when you're on event, maybe if they can come in there and manipulate you a little bit, might be able to be helpful. I was thinking because, when you're laying there and nothing's moving, you lose all that muscle mass. So I don't know, I'm not a professional. Brian would, know this. If that would help any, with just moving the patient a little bit, trying to, work them around, even though they're on the vent, try to, manipulate their arms, try to take the swelling out a little bit more, that kind of stuff. And the step down, absolutely. When Danielle and Stephanie and Rebecca, they would come in, they would, take the swelling out of my arms and everything. But maybe while you're under in the CCU, maybe they can be a more intricate part of, the person's, health, getting better. I don't know. Maybe that, that might help. I don't know, may not, you guys would know.
Yeah, well, it's all good because that's your perspective from that patient side, which is exactly, I think, the feedback that Caitlin was looking for. One of our members made another comment, Teresa Matson. She said, "I cannot tell you how valuable you're telling all of us about your incredible experience. The whole world needs to hear this. Thank you so very much, and God bless you and your families." This, one of the things, we did this, and when I asked Brian, I said, "Hey, can we put this together? If I can get Steve and Bill, to come on." One of the things that we've been trying to push, and it was said in March, one of the essential services the governor recognized publicly was physical therapy. It's Physical Therapy Month, and the association is obviously an advocate to try to protect and advance, as I said earlier, the profession. What do you guys, what do you think the public needs to know? Now, I know we have other healthcare professionals, but I'm going to try to bounce it into physical therapy. What do you think the public needs to know about the physical therapy profession, physical therapists, and physical therapist assistants? Go ahead, Steve. I'll let you start.
I think what the public needs to know is that they are an integral part of your recovery. Once all your vitals are leveled out, they are important to get you going. I think, from the OTs, the PTs, the assistants, they are your guiding light to getting back to 100%. And right now, like I'm amazed. My wife is amazed. I'm walking, and the guys, my PTs and OTs would love to hear. I'm up to I'm almost a mile and a third walking, which is a great, which is a big thing for me. I'm still fatigued, tired, but eventually I'll get back to that, 3-4 miles a day. And I think that, they are the guiding light to getting back to a normal life.
Yeah, if I could add, and I think I've said this, excuse me, they're not only taking care of your physical needs, but in my case, and I'm sure Steve would say the same thing, my mental case, I needed them. I needed to talk to them. I needed them to talk to me. They become your family, while you're there. Your family can't come see you, so you kind of, I adopted 3 young ladies while I was inpatient, and I adopted another 2 when I was an outpatient. And they really helped me, not only physically, and I don't want to leave the speech therapists out there too, because that was the biggest challenge I had was the swallowing. But they just, they became my family. And once again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'll just never forget them. They mean so very, very, very much to me. And I benefited from my stay there. Once again, I wish I hadn't been there, but I definitely came out a better man. And a better person, no question about it.
Well,
Steve,
thanks, guys.
I have a question for Steve, Dan.
Go ahead, Brian.
Steve and Bill, unfortunately, me and my colleagues, a lot of times we live in a world of patients per hour, units, charges, and all those things. So this is a reminder of what's important. Steve, I know that one day they dragged you to the window with 6-foot-long IV. What did that mean to you when you were in DCU?
It was, I went into the step down. I couldn't move. They said, Steve, we have a surprise for you. They took 3 or 4 people into the room, and they had to move all my cables and everything out of the NG tube. They wanted to move in the bed to the window and down, and little tiny people in the parking lot. My wife held up a sign saying, Steve, we love you. That gave me so much hope. Still to this day, I have the sign. I can actually show you.
Same here. I had the same experience. It was terrific.
This is my sign. I still have it. And that's what my wife wound up holding up. I was able to see it. And I looked at, I had this put on an Encompass. They hung it up at Encompass too. And I would look at it every day, and it said, we love you, Steve, Daddy. And I knew I had a family to get home to. And I had to live my life.
To all the insurance companies out there, there is no CPT code for that. But that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great point, Brian. I can't believe we're coming up on the hour. I mean, this has been fantastic. We had one more comment. Leslie Marks, who used to be one of our officers, is a longtime member. She said, I think perhaps we should all adapt Bill's ARM, A-R-M. Thank you so much for your powerful stories and for giving us some insights into what it feels like to have COVID. It gives us all some things to think about so we can be even better at what we do. It is our mission to help people, impact lives, and make a difference. So, I think, Leslie and everybody else here, you're hearing the impact that you've made in these 2 gentlemen's lives. And I remember early on, actually, a guy who played in the NFL, Bill, played for the Buccaneers. He always said, you can impress a person from far away, but you can impact a person from up close. And I think, you're definitely seeing that impact. We are getting ready to close out. So before I turn it back over to Brian, Bill, Steve, I want to thank you guys so much for doing this. Bill, I can't wait to see you. There's a Kessler plug, absolutely. So, Bill, I can't wait to see you back up at Giant Stadium. And
MetLife Stadium.
It's still Giant Stadium.
Okay.
It's not to me. It'll always be Giant Stadium. Steve, go ahead, Bill.
I look forward to seeing you too, Dan.
Yeah, and Steve, I can't wait to see the sensational Soul Cruisers out and about again. And maybe Brian even said maybe we can do an APTA event with you guys. So I want to remind everybody who's there, it's still October. October is Physical Therapy Month. Tomorrow night we have a town hall meeting. This weekend is our fall conference with another absolutely tremendous patient, a patient perspective, a gentleman by the name of Eric LeGrand, who is, a paralyzed football player from Rutgers, who is really changing the world and raising millions of dollars for spinal cord research. The Friday before our fall conference will actually be his 10-year anniversary of his injury suffered at MetLife Stadium. So really look forward to hearing him. We have a couple webinars coming up on insurance and balance disorders. Check our website. And then the weekend of October 23rd to the 25th, we are doing an APTA-NJ Move-a-thon, where we're encouraging people to support our political action committee and support the association with a $35 contribution and do at least 30 minutes worth of running, walking, Peloton, kayaking, swimming. We will send you one of these fancy APTA-NJ masks. Steve and Bill, I have some special things for you guys. But if you guys can support that move-a-thon, we're trying to go with a hashtag for PT month here. That hashtag PT is essential in NJ. And that's really what we've tried to impress upon. And I think you've heard how essential, we're talking about PT, but OT and speech and hospital workers and technicians, how essential everybody is to this thing. So for me, this has been tremendous to be a part of. Thank you guys so much, on behalf of me personally. And now to close it out, I'm going to turn it back over to APTA-NJ President Brian Mason. But before I do, just like I said, we're recording this session, so we'll put it on our website. We'll blast it out. And for those who feel that people need to hear this message, please feel free to forward on the link. So again, thanks again. Stay healthy, everybody. Brian, you can take us out.
I want to thank you, gentlemen. Okay, the reason we became physical therapists or occupational therapists or respiratory therapists or speech language pathologists is for this. We didn't come to drop units, drop charges, and make tons of money. We came here for people, and you've reminded us what the important thing is. I'm extremely proud of my profession and my colleagues, the ones who stepped up every day and did these things when that was scary. A lot of them were scared too. They had things at home that it wasn't uncommon for these professionals to run into their garage and take their clothes off and hopefully have the garage door closed by that time and then run into the shower and repeat it all the next day. And they did it for the patients. So I'm very, very proud of our profession. So thank you, gentlemen.